History tells us that empires are built by the swords of men. But what if the most powerful empire in the world was secretly ruled from the shadows? Forget the sultans you know. Forget the kings. Meet the billionaire princess who financed wars, executed grand viziers, and manipulated the fate of Europe without ever leaving her palace. She wasn't just a daughter, she was the deadliest political mastermind of the 16th century. This is the untold story of Mihrimah Sultan. Welcome to Empire Whispers. The year is 1522. The Ottoman Empire's golden age is at its absolute peak. Its territory spans 3 continents, its navy commands the Mediterranean, and its army is the ultimate terror of Europe. And at the very heart of this colossal superpower, behind the walls of the old palace in Istanbul, a baby girl is born. A child who would eventually alter the course of history. Her mother is the most controversial and powerful woman in Ottoman history, Hurrem Sultan, known in the West as Roxolana. Her father is the empire's longest reigning monarch, Suleiman the Magnificent. As the only daughter of this ultimate Eastern power couple, she was born to be the brightest star of the dynasty from the moment she took her first breath. Suleiman the Magnificent chose a Persian name for his beloved daughter, Mihrimah, meaning the sun and the moon. It was more than a name, it was a prophecy. With her scorching, sun-like power and her mysterious, moon-like influence, this little girl was destined to become the most brilliant woman in Ottoman history. Mihrimah's birth was no ordinary royal event, because her mother, Hurrem, was about to achieve something unprecedented. Breaking centuries of strict tradition, a slave concubine officially married the Sultan. Hurrem was freed and became Suleiman's legal wife. This revolutionary step catapulted Mihrimah's legitimacy and prestige to absolute heights. She wasn't just a concubine's child anymore. She was an imperial princess born to the Sultan's legal wife. Mihrimah Sultan's fame quickly reached far beyond the Ottoman borders. Western diplomats and travelers spoke in awe of her beauty and her absolute influence. They called her Sultana Cameria. Even Titian, the greatest master of the Italian Renaissance, was so captivated by the legend of this Ottoman princess that he painted imaginary portraits of her without ever seeing her face. No one knew what she truly looked like, but her name was whispered in every court across Europe. Deep inside the Topkapi Palace Harem, Mihrimah received an intensely disciplined education fit for an imperial mastermind. She mastered Turkish, Persian, and Arabic. She studied theology, law, history, literature, poetry, and music. She wasn't just being raised to be a wife, she was being forged into a political weapon. That diplomatic finesse and sharp political mind she would later use to write letters directly to the kings of Europe, it was all cultivated right here in the harem. Mihrimah was destined to shine with her intellect as much as her beauty. Mihrimah Sultan was growing up during the empire's most glorious era, raised by its most powerful ruler and its most influential woman. At the time, the empire stretched from the gates of Vienna to the Persian Gulf. Before the young princess even turned 15, she had learned the language of power, the art of politics, and the brutal rules of the Game of Thrones. And very soon she would use those rules to her absolute advantage, because one of the most strategic marriages in history was on the horizon. In the Ottoman court, marriage wasn't about love, it was about power. And Hurrem Sultan needed an unbreakable alliance to secure her absolute control over the empire. She set her eyes on Rustem Pasha, an ambitious and exceptionally wealthy governor from the Balkans. He was the perfect pawn and the perfect son-in-law. But this marriage was a direct threat to the old guard, the established political elite of the empire. They had to stop him at all costs. To destroy Rustem's chances, his political rivals launched one of the most bizarre smear campaigns in history. They spread a terrifying rumor throughout the capital. Rustem Pasha had leprosy. In the 16th century, leprosy was a death sentence, both physically and politically. No sultan would ever marry his beloved daughter to a leper. The rumor worked. The wedding was halted, and Suleiman ordered an immediate medical investigation. The head palace physician was dispatched to Rustem's camp. He found no visible signs of the disease, but he needed undeniable proof. As he meticulously examined Rustem's undergarments, he found it. A single, tiny louse on his linen shirt. It sounds repulsive today, but in the 1500s, it was the ultimate medical alibi. The scientific belief of the time dictated that a louse could not survive on a body running a high fever caused by leprosy. That single, solitary bug proved Rustem's absolute innocence. It saved his life, his career, and secured him the hand of the most powerful princess in the world. As the famous Ottoman proverb was born that day, if a man's luck is on his side, even a louse can bring him fortune. In November 1539, the ultimate power alliance was forged. 17-year-old Mihrimah married Rustem Pasha in a colossal 15-day celebration at the Hippodrome in Istanbul. It was a display of unimaginable wealth and power. But behind the fireworks and feasts, a dark shadow was falling over the empire. The ultimate Game of Thrones had begun. The Ottoman law of succession was brutal. Kill or be killed. There was no line of succession. Whoever seized the throne had the legal right and the obligation to execute all his brothers to prevent civil war. Suleiman's eldest son, Prince Mustafa, was not Hurrem's child. He was immensely popular with the army and the people. If Mustafa became sultan, Hurrem's sons would all be executed, and so would she. To ensure their survival, the ultimate political triumvirate was formed. The Empress Hurrem, the Grand Vizier Rustem, and the Princess Mihrimah. Operating from the shadows, they needed to convince Suleiman that his golden child was committing treason. Historical rumors suggest a deadly trap was set. Forged letters, allegedly bearing Mustafa's seal, were intercepted. These letters claimed Mustafa was secretly negotiating with the Shah of Persia to overthrow his father. In an empire where treason was punished by death without trial, this was the ultimate death warrant. In 1553, during the Persian campaign, Suleiman summoned Mustafa to his tent. The prince entered, expecting to greet his father. Instead, he was ambushed by the deaf-mute executioners of the court. In a brutal, agonizing struggle, the golden prince of the empire was strangled with a bowstring, while his father watched from behind a curtain. It was the Ottoman equivalent of the Red Wedding, a shocking, brutal elimination of a beloved heir. The army erupted in fury. The elite Janissary Corps demanded blood. To calm the massive rebellion, Suleiman was forced to fire Rustem Pasha, stripping him of the Grand Vizier title. It seemed the triumvirate had lost. But Mihrimah was just getting started. The replacement Grand Vizier, Kara Ahmed Pasha, didn't last long. 2 years later, he was accused of corruption and executed in front of the Imperial Council. Who orchestrated his downfall? Rustem and Mihrimah. Rustem was immediately reinstated as Grand Vizier, more powerful than ever. The opposition was entirely crushed. Mihrimah had proven that anyone who stood in her way would be utterly destroyed. In the bitter winter of 1558, the unimaginable happened. A silence fell over the Topkapi Palace, so heavy it threatened to crush the very foundations of the empire. Hurrem Sultan, the slave girl who defied centuries of tradition to become the legal wife of Suleiman the Magnificent, the most feared and powerful woman in Ottoman history, was dead. Suleiman the Magnificent, the absolute ruler of 3 continents, was shattered. The man who made Europe tremble retreated into his chambers, consumed by an unbearable grief. But in the ruthless world of the Ottoman court, grief is a luxury, and the power vacuum is an invitation to treason. The Grand Viziers, the Pashas, and the foreign ambassadors all held their breath. Without the Queen Mother to control the Harem and advise the Sultan, who would take the reins? Many believed the era of powerful women had died with Hurrem. They were dead wrong. From the deepest shadows of the grieving palace, a new force emerged. Mihrimah Sultan, now a highly experienced and unimaginably wealthy 36-year-old woman, stepped into the ultimate void. She did not just take over the management of the harem, she inherited her mother's political empire. She became the de facto valide sultan, the acting empress. But her influence went far beyond the gilded cages of the women's quarters. She became her father's closest confidant, his political sounding board, and his chief advisor. While Europe thought Suleiman was ruling alone, it was Mihrimah who stood beside him, analyzing military intelligence, managing diplomatic correspondence, and steering the fate of millions. She was the shadow empress. But the empire was about to face its darkest hour. As Suleiman grew old and frail, a brutal, apocalyptic civil war erupted between Mihrimah's 2 surviving brothers, Prince Selim, the cunning politician, and Prince Bayezid, the fierce warrior. According to the bloody Ottoman law of succession, only one could survive. The other had to be executed to prevent the empire from tearing itself apart. Mihrimah found herself in the center of a deadly family feud. She had to choose a side. She threw her immense weight behind Selim, but Bayezid was unpredictable and highly dangerous. To neutralize him, historical records suggest Mihrimah masterminded a genius, ruthless strategy of psychological warfare alongside her father. She advised Suleiman to play a deadly game of good cop, bad cop. They sent 2 simultaneous letters to the rebel brother Bayezid. One letter was soft, emotional, and forgiving, promising him safety if he surrendered. The other was harsh, terrifying, and threatened total annihilation. The psychological pressure was designed to break Bayezid's mind, to push him into a fatal mistake. And it worked. Panicked and paranoid, Bayezid made the ultimate blunder. He fled to the Ottoman Empire's greatest enemy, the Shah of Persia. It was an act of high treason. The trap had closed. Suleiman paid the Shah an astronomical ransom, and Bayezid, along with all of his young sons, was strangled to death in a Persian prison. The succession was secured, but the cost was paid in royal blood. 8 years later, in 1566, the era of the Magnificent came to an end. Suleiman died during a military campaign in Hungary. His death was kept a strict state secret, while Prince Selim rushed to the capital to claim the throne. But the transition of power was never peaceful. As Selim II was crowned, a terrifying crisis erupted. The Janissaries, the elite, heavily armed shock troops of the empire, surrounded the palace. They were the ultimate kingmakers, and they demanded their traditional coronation bonus. But there was a massive problem. Decades of endless warfare had drained the state treasury. It was completely empty. The Sultan had no money to pay his own army. The Janissaries drew their swords, threatening to riot, overthrow the new Sultan, and plunge the empire into anarchy. A military coup was just hours away. It was in this desperate, terrifying moment that Mihrimah Sultan proved her absolute supremacy. While the Sultan panicked, Mihrimah calmly unlocked the doors to her personal treasury. She handed her brother 50,000 gold ducats, an astronomical, incomprehensible fortune, paid entirely out of her own pocket. The Janissaries were paid. The swords were lowered. The rebellion was crushed before it even began. Mihrimah didn't just bail out the Ottoman state, she single-handedly bought the throne for her brother. She proved to the entire world that while the Sultan wore the crown, it was the shadow Empress who truly ruled the empire. If Mihrimah Sultan were alive today, she would easily dominate the cover of Forbes magazine as one of the most powerful billionaires on the planet. History often remembers princesses as mere pawns in political marriages, draped in silk and confined to the shadows of the harem. But Mihrimah was a completely different breed. She wasn't just a royal dependent on a state allowance. She was a ruthless, brilliant, and unimaginably wealthy billionaire industrialist. She didn't just spend money, she generated it on a scale that terrified foreign observers. She controlled vast, highly profitable agricultural lands that stretched across 3 continents, from the Balkans to the Middle East. She owned independent, heavily guarded trade routes and massive real estate portfolios in the capital. She even ran a staggering wheat monopoly with the powerful Republic of Ragusa, essentially functioning as a one-woman global cartel. While the men of the empire fought wars with swords, Mihrimah fought them with gold, establishing an economic empire that rivaled the state treasury itself. And with that astronomical wealth came unparalleled political power. She operated like a shadow foreign minister. When the King of Poland took the throne, it wasn't just the Sultan who wrote to congratulate him. Mihrimah sent her own personal, highly classified letters, accompanied by lavish diplomatic gifts that left European monarchs in awe. The kings of Europe quickly realized a fundamental truth. If they wanted something from the Ottoman Empire, they had to go through her. She was the ultimate gatekeeper to the Sultan's ear. But her most jaw-dropping, legendary flex of wealth happened during the high-stakes planning of the Siege of Malta. The Ottoman High Command, the most seasoned generals and admirals of the era, were hesitating. They were deeply worried about the massive, almost crippling financial cost of launching a naval invasion across the Mediterranean. The War Council was deadlocked. And then Mihrimah spoke. She silenced the entire room of hardened military veterans with a single, terrifying sentence. She turned to her father and said, "If you attack Malta, I will personally fund the construction of 400 warships from my own purse." 400 warships, paid for in cash out of her own pocket. It was an apocalyptic display of financial dominance that proved she could single-handedly bankroll the most feared military machine in the world. She didn't just finance wars, she financed eternity. Mihrimah poured her vast wealth into monumental architectural projects, hiring the legendary genius Mimar Sinan. She built colossal twin mosque complexes on both the Asian and European shores of Istanbul, ensuring her name would dominate the city's skyline forever. When Istanbul faced a crippling water crisis, it wasn't the state that fixed it. Mihrimah spent an absolute fortune to build massive, highly engineered aqueducts and hundreds of public fountains, bringing fresh, clean water to the capital and securing the eternal, unshakable loyalty of the public. She understood that whoever controls the water controls the city. Her investments weren't just charity, they were highly calculated political maneuvers designed to cement her status as a living legend among the common people. The Venetian ambassador, Giacomo Soranzo, sent panicked, highly classified reports back to the doges of Europe. He described her as a woman of unimaginable, terrifying wealth and influence. He warned them that Mihrimah didn't just wear the crown jewels, she could buy the entire treasury 10 times over. She was the ultimate political CEO, leveraging her infinite cash to dictate the foreign policy of the world's most powerful empire. She proved that true power doesn't just come from the sword, it comes from the vault. Mihrimah Sultan was not content with merely manipulating the levers of political power. She understood that while political empires inevitably crumble, monuments carved in stone and light can last for eternity. She wanted her name to outlive the Ottoman dynasty itself. To achieve this, the billionaire princess teamed up with the chief imperial architect, Mimar Sinan, a genius widely recognized today as the Michelangelo of the East. The synergy between the richest woman in the world and the greatest architect in history resulted in some of the most spectacular, gravity-defying megacomplexes the empire had ever seen. Her first major architectural statement was a massive cultural center and mosque complex in Üsküdar, located on the Asian shores of the Bosphorus. It wasn't just a place of worship, it was a sprawling, self-sustaining city within a city, complete with a hospital, a massive soup kitchen, and theological schools. With its twin minarets delicately designed to resemble a woman's silhouette wrapped in a sweeping skirt, it was a bold, unmissable declaration of her absolute status. She was not just a princess, she was a sovereign power dominating the Asian skyline. But she didn't stop there. Decades later, as a mature, fiercely independent widow, she commissioned a second mosque. This time, she chose the absolute highest, most visible hill in all of Istanbul, Edirne Kapı. What Sinan built there was nothing short of an engineering miracle. He pushed the boundaries of 16th century physics, designing a structure with so many massive windows that the colossal dome appears to magically float on sheer light. And despite standing directly on top of one of the world's most active and devastating fault lines, this glass-like, fragile-looking fortress has survived massive, city-destroying earthquakes for nearly 500 years without a single scratch. But the true genius of these two mosques lies in a breathtaking celestial secret, a hidden mathematical code designed by Sinan himself. Mihrimah's Persian name, Mihrimah, literally translates to the sun and the moon. According to historical legend, on the 21st of March, the spring equinox, and Mihrimah's exact birthday, an astronomical miracle occurs. If you stand in the right place in Istanbul, you will witness the blood-red sun setting perfectly behind the single minaret of the Edirne Mosque in Europe, while at that exact, precise moment, a giant, glowing full moon rises perfectly between the twin minarets of the Üsküdar Mosque in Asia. It is a cosmic alignment, a billion-dollar love letter carved into the very geography of the earth. Mihrimah's grand vision, however, was not limited to the capital. Her philanthropy had a terrifyingly powerful global reach. When the ancient water channels of Mecca collapsed during the scorching heat of the annual pilgrimage, thousands of pilgrims were suddenly at risk of dying of thirst in the desert. The Imperial Council panicked. Rebuilding the massive Arafat water infrastructure would bankrupt the already strained state treasury. The empire was scrambling to find funds. Mihrimah didn't hesitate. She simply stepped in and signed a single order, donating 500,000 gold pieces from her personal vaults. 500,000 gold ducats. It was a sum so astronomically high it could fund entire wars. She single-handedly repaired the water system of the holiest city in Islam, saving thousands of lives. Once again, her money didn't just save the day, it proved that her power was absolute, reaching from the highest hills of Istanbul to the deepest deserts of Arabia. For centuries, a beautiful, tragic, romantic myth has dominated the story of Mihrimah Sultan. We've all heard the fairy tale. The legendary imperial architect Mimar Sinan was secretly and hopelessly in love with the princess. According to this legend, he was so consumed by forbidden passion that he designed her two grand mosques as a secret, celestial love letter. He mathematically aligned them so that on her exact birthday, the spring equinox, the red sun would set behind one mosque in Europe, while the full moon rose behind the other in Asia. It is a stunning, poetic story. But the cold, hard historical reality is far different. First and foremost, when a teenage Mihrimah was married off to the Grand Vizier Rustem Pasha, Mimar Sinan was already over 50 years old and married himself. More importantly, in the hyper-paranoid, heavily guarded protocol of the 16th century Ottoman palace, a state contractor, no matter how genius, and an imperial princess would never even meet face to face, let alone exchange longing, romantic glances. Their relationship was strictly professional. She was a ruthless, billionaire client with an unlimited budget. He was a master engineer executing her grand visions. As for the legendary sun and moon alignment, it is an undeniable, breathtaking stroke of architectural genius by Sinan, a magnificent mathematical tribute to her Persian name, which translates to the sun and the moon. But a secret declaration of forbidden love? The historical archives say absolutely not. Reducing Mihrimah Sultan to the fragile subject of a tragic, unrequited romance is a massive disservice to her true, terrifying legacy. She wasn't a love-struck princess pining for romance. She was a hardened political operator, a kingmaker, and the shadow empress who funded armadas and crushed her political rivals without mercy. But in the brutal Game of Thrones of the Ottoman court, no reign lasts forever. And Mihrimah's downfall did not come from an army, but from another woman. When her brother, Sultan Selim II, passed away, the throne was inherited by his son, Murad III. With a new sultan came a new queen mother, Nurbanu Sultan. Nurbanu was a fiercely intelligent, incredibly cunning, and ruthlessly ambitious Venetian-born powerhouse. Suddenly, the Topkapi Palace was too small for two empresses. What followed was the ultimate, high-stakes clash of queens. On one side was Mihrimah, the aging but legendary daughter of Suleiman the Magnificent, carrying the immense weight of the empire's golden age. On the other was Nurbanu, the sharp, highly manipulative mother of the new sovereign, hungry for absolute control. It was a cold war fought in the shadowed, gilded corridors of the Harem. They battled for influence over the young sultan, for control of the vast treasury, and for ultimate supremacy over the empire's foreign policy. But Nurbanu was a master strategist. Slowly, methodically, she eroded Mihrimah's deep-rooted influence. She replaced Mihrimah's loyalists with her own, isolating the legendary princess. The climax of this bitter rivalry ended in Mihrimah's total, devastating defeat. The woman who once bailed out the Ottoman state with her own gold, the woman who commanded war councils and dictated letters to the kings of Europe, was finally outplayed. Nurbanu successfully convinced her son to officially strip his aunt of her political power. In a deeply humiliating final act, Mihrimah was exiled from the center of power. She was banished to the Old Palace, the quiet, isolated retirement home for forgotten, irrelevant royals. It was a silent, tragic fall for the ultimate shadow empress. She spent her final years stripped of the political power that had defined her entire life, watching from afar as a new queen ruled the empire she had built. Mihrimah Sultan outlived almost everyone she ever loved and everyone she ever fought. She survived her mother Hurrem. She survived her husband, Rustem. She survived the Golden Prince Mustafa, the rebel Bayezid, and even the Sultan Selim. She watched the golden age of the empire rise, and she watched its slow, inevitable decline. Finally, in 1578, at the age of 56, the light of the sun and the moon faded. The shadow empress was dead. Suleiman the Magnificent had many children. He had mighty sons who commanded vast armies, and heirs who sat on the imperial throne. But if you visit the magnificent Süleymaniye Mausoleum in Istanbul today, you will discover a profound, silent truth. Underneath the Great Dome, bathed in eternal shadow, there is only one child buried right next to the legendary Sultan. Not the warrior prince Mustafa, not the successor Selim. Only Mihrimah. It is the ultimate, undeniable historical testament to her absolute supremacy. In life, she was his closest confidant, his brilliant political strategist, and the most terrifyingly powerful woman of the 16th century. In death, she remains exactly where she always belonged, resting in eternal glory right by her father's side. Thank you for watching this episode of Empire Whispers. If you enjoyed discovering the ruthless, untold reality behind the Ottoman Game of Thrones, smash that like button and subscribe for more epic historical documentaries. See you in the next Whisper.